It's also easy, when you've read some of the newspaper headlines, to try to create a simple, direct narrative about what has happened and what we think we know. And I am just guessing from reading some of the coverage, and I've read a lot of the coverage, is that the truth is much more complicated and nuanced, and there's still so much that we do not know, aside from the name of the presenter and the youngster involved in some of the allegations. We know that the BBC is being put in the dock over its handling of it, and sure, there are going to be questions to answer about that. We've also seen the very odd spectre of this weekend presenters outing themselves as not being the person concerned. And you can imagine the rightful anger they felt when they were suddenly across Twitter as, you know, you are a nonce, you are a this, you are a that, you're a terrible human being and you've done terrible things, when they have absolutely no part of it. And we heard a bit of that today when Nicky Campbell was presenting his 5 Live show.
But it was a distressing weekend. I can't deny it, for me and others falsely named. Today, I'm having further conversations with the police in terms of malicious communication and with lawyers in terms of defamation.
Jeremy Vine did something very similar as well. He talked about being smacked around on Twitter. This is something that is actually hurting and affecting quite a lot of people. And I guess one of the big questions that you're thinking about is the naming or not naming. And we are in this slightly odd universe at the moment where many of you listening will know exactly who the presenter in question is. And we think in this room, in our gallery, we probably know exactly who the presenter is. And on social media sites, you will understand that people are talking about this individual, and yet in the wider world, you know, in the world of television broadcast news or the newspapers or the public court, actually, people won't know and they will still be asking. And it does create this slightly curious division between people who think they're in the know at this point and people who are still wanting to be brought into the conversation because they feel that they're being left out even by the story that broke the news itself. And that was The Sun. And we'll be talking in a moment to David Yelland, who's a former editor of The Sun. It belongs to the Rupert Murdoch group, News UK. And he's going to guide us a little bit through how those editorial choices are made at the newspaper and also remind us of just what commercial vitriol there is between one Rupert Murdoch, owner of The Sun, and the BBC, who they'd quite like to see brought to its knees on something like this.
Yeah, and I think it is very interesting, the sort of naming, non-naming aspect of all of this. Because, as you say, Emily, you know, if you go around, I can't believe there is a newsroom in London or a legal group that don't know who the name of this person is. And I thought it was very disingenuous when I kind of heard on the BBC a presenter saying, well, we still don't know who this presenter is. And I thought, well, no, you do know who the presenter is. It's just that for the moment, you're not naming this particular person.
And we're not naming them either because, just to show our workings, we have our media lawyer sitting across this, listening to everything that we're saying to make sure that we stay the right side of privacy laws, which is what lies behind this. We have no proof, we have no evidence, and we frankly have no right to start naming people whose privacy would be destroyed by this.
But then you get to the question of the Sun coverage, because it is my belief that although the privacy laws have changed, if the Sun had 100% confidence that they had every aspect of this story squared off, just as we have seen on other scandals in the recent past, the person in question would have been named. And it kind of raises all sorts of interesting issues. And I've heard the legal explanations about why they have not been named so far. And I kind of think journalistically, they only make so much sense. There is something that there's still a lot that we don't know, that the BBC probably doesn't know itself about what has happened and is still trying to figure out. And that is why I think that people who are just going to try and be too black and white about this need to pause and take a breath and just consider how complicated this might be.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.